war. The senator serves on the Foreign Relations Committee and has insight into the conflict, which has been brewing now for years. Senator Rubio, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
October 7th, unprecedented attack on Israel that was carried out by Hamas. You have been in Israel several times. You're a supporter of the state of Israel. First, your initial thoughts on what happened.
Well, I think everyone was surprised, including the Israelis, by the tactics that were used by Hamas. They had never seen that sort of incursion before, with people coming in on paragliders and breaking through fences and motorcycles and the like. I don't think anyone who knows anything about Hamas was surprised by their intentions or what they did. Hamas is an organization. They are basically an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. They took over Gaza in 2007. And the stated purpose of Hamas is to drive every Jew out of the Middle East and from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, establish a fundamentalist Islamic country that has no Jews and no Christians, and that they govern. That's their goal. And by driving every Jew out of there, they mean either intimidating them into leaving or killing them. And so the destruction of the Jewish state is their aim. It's their goal. And you have seen them since that time not only defend the attack by saying that there are no such things as civilians in these areas, but they've actually come out flat out and said that they intend to do this again in the future. So Israel really has no choice when faced with an enemy who has done this, the butchery that we can't talk enough about, nor should we try to hide. And at the same time, that butchery that they intend, what country in the world could possibly can you demand they coexist alongside a group like this?
The next few days, weeks, and months could be some of Israel's most important days in its history. But the reality is that Israel is surrounded by its enemies. So even if they, in fact, eliminate Hamas, it remains a complex situation in the Middle East. Do you believe there could still be a solution to this, that there could still be a path to a two-state solution?
Well, the problem with the two-state scenario is not the theory, it's the reality of who would be the second state. Would it be one governed by Hamas? Would it be one governed by the Palestinian Authority, who itself is, people say they're more moderate, but they also give money and reward to martyrs, to people they consider martyrs. So if you blow yourself up, if you blow up a bus in Jerusalem and kill Jews, they will give your your family money for the rest of their lives as a reward for it. So who is the second state? Is it Hezbollah? So the problem Israel faces is not that every time it has turned over territory, be it Gaza, with a peace accord with Egypt, be it the West Bank, whatever it may be, those territories are used to launch attacks against Israel. The impediment to a two-state solution here is not Israel. It is that second state does not want an Israel. As
Israeli troops continue to push their way through Gaza, President Biden has pledged his support for Israel. There are ships in the Mediterranean Sea right now, which has sent a strong message to those who may want to pose more harm to Israel. So are you satisfied with the response of the Biden administration so far?
Well, there's two things at play here. As far as the U.S. military presence, that military presence is there primarily, not exclusively, but primarily for the purpose of acting as a deterrent against attacks against Americans. Now, obviously, it's a deterrent that right now is not credible because the Iranians have now conducted, as we do this interview today, over at least 30 attacks against the United States using their proxy groups. They have directed those attacks, they've encouraged them, they've facilitated them against Americans. Those attacks are going to start coming faster. They're going to use deadlier weapons. They're going to go beyond Iraq and Syria to try to reach Americans in Kuwait and the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, if we do not establish a credible deterrent. So we have the capability to do a credible deterrent, both economic and military. But to do that, we're going to have to impose costs on Iran. Now, I don't say that lightly, because establishing deterrent in and of itself could lead to escalation. But the failure to establish a deterrent guarantees an escalation.
So I want to talk about those attacks on U.S. forces that you say Iran is behind, now over 30, as you mentioned. Is the message clear to Iran? Has the U.S. put them on notice, or does more need to be done?
Well, we haven't done enough because the attacks keep coming. And not only the attacks keep coming, we know for a fact that we haven't done enough. We know for a fact that the Iranians, both in their public statements and in their actions, have believed that there is a threshold that will trigger a U.S. response, and they are not even close to that threshold. I recognize that if we take actions directly against Iran, and we need to, there is a real risk of escalation. But I know that if we don't, it guarantees escalation, because eventually they will kill Americans, I'm sad to say, but they will use more sophisticated weapons eventually. And eventually they're going to start killing Americans. And then there will be a demand. And at that point, we're off to the races, and now it begins to spiral. So I've been talking about this, I believe now almost 3 weeks, 2 weeks before the first attack even happened, because I saw it coming. And the administration, as I said, they had the assets in place to deter, but right now, but they have not established it, because there's not, the Iranians do not believe that there's a willingness to do anything about it.
So far, those attacks have been on U.S. forces and bases. Are you hearing about any potential attacks here on our soil?
Well, I think the biggest risk to attacks here on our soil are lone wolf-inspired attacks. And what I mean is somebody who sympathizes with Hamas, somebody who sympathizes with Hezbollah. And as this conflict goes forward and they're watching Al Jazeera and they're getting fired up by what they're being told, decide that they're going to move beyond ripping down posters of hostages to actually killing Jews, blowing up a synagogue, targeting, God forbid, the New York Marathon, or whatever. I mean, that really is the risk, because those are very hard to disrupt. Those are single individuals or small groups of individuals that, inspired by events, could be triggered into action. And it only took 2 people to do the horrifying things we saw at the Boston Marathon as an example. So I think that's the greatest short-term risk. I think long-term, we know for a fact that the Iranians have already in the past tried to kill and kidnap people inside the United States. We have indictments that speak to that. And we know that Hezbollah has built the same capability. And both Hezbollah and Iran want that capability to target Americans in the homeland, because they view it as a deterrent. It is, they know they can't beat us in a frontal war, but if they can attack us here at home, or they can impose costs here at home, it will discourage us from getting into a war with them or doing anything back to them. So that's a risk that exists as well. But I think the most immediate and urgent one is the one of small groups of individuals who are inspired by events to take action. We've seen this rise in anti-Semitism. And, if 100 people are out there ripping up posters, it only takes one of them to decide to start killing Jews to have a terrorist attack in the United States. I'm very worried about that.